guys, Arena Matcha here. Today's video is going to be a bit controversial and it's likely to piss off and offend a lot of people, so if you're easily offended, I don't recommend you watching. Let's get into this. What does it mean to be woke? What does it mean to be an SJW or a social justice warrior? Are these terms even still relevant? As long as art continues to be censored, celebrities continue to be cancelled, and as long as people, especially artists, grow more and more afraid to perform or say certain things for fear of being offensive, then yeah, this is a very relevant topic. First of all, I want to insist that I don't condone genuine racism or sexism or homophobia or any kind of genuine actual bigotry. There are movies out there that are genuinely racist, such as the 1915 movie The Birth of a Nation, which glorifies the Ku Klux Klan. Sex and the City is one of my favourite television shows, and it does a terrible job in how it represents bisexual people. The women basically say that bisexual people don't exist and that bisexuality is just a myth. Bisexuality is real, hun. Having said that, do I think that this show deserves to be cancelled? No, I don't. If anything, I think that it's an example of how far society has come. We have to look at these older shows and films and say, okay, we appreciate it for what it was then. This is where we were. This is where we are now. Now, I would never call myself an ally to the LGBT plus community because I'm not a fan of this idea that people have to be allies to somehow prove or show that they support lesbian, gay, bi, trans, etc. rights. Having said that, if people want to say that they are allies, if they have specific reasons why they feel the need to make that a big part of themselves, I got no problem with that. I just think that if you say that you're an ally, be an ally. Don't just say I'm an ally for show, because I think too many people are doing that nowadays. It's a big part of virtue signaling. I want to talk about sensitivity readers because I know that they are a big trend in publishing. I completely understand the necessity for somebody to fact check, say if they're running a character who has ADHD or a terminal illness. The idea that white people need someone to check that they haven't written a black character offensively. Why do they need a sensitivity reader? Why are we assuming that the whole crux of someone's identity should be that they're black or that they're gay or trans? Doesn't that further reinforce the idea of tokenism? Wokenism. It assumes that white people are unable to empathize with people who don't look like them. How could a white person possibly empathize with a black person? Because a black person is not just a human being. How could a straight person empathize with a gay person? How can I empathize with lesbians when I'm not a lesbian? Unless you're specifically writing about their struggles, about coming out as a gay person, or about experiencing racism. But even then, white authors have done this. Wasn't Harper Lee white? To Kill a Mockingbird? Are we saying that white people cannot be sympathetic to black people undergoing racial struggles? Are we saying that a straight woman cannot be empathetic to a lesbian character? I'm able to naturally empathize with human beings because that's a huge part of being an artist. Most authors simply cannot afford to pay for a sensitivity reader on top of everything else that they're paying for. And I don't think that any author should have to feel like they have to fork out for this as another expense, especially if their book really doesn't call for it. If they're just writing a book and some of the characters are black and some of the characters are gay, it's just a description of who they are, of how they are, not even who they are, how they appear. Writing is not about pandering to people's feelings. Fiction serves two purposes fundamentally. One is to entertain and the other is to make us think. Artists are naturally sensitive. We're naturally sensitive to certain things, but it doesn't mean that we have to be overly sensitive. I write to express certain things. How are we gonna continue to pump out work that pushes boundaries, that is challenging, that challenges us in some way? My job is not to pander to anyone's feelings. Your feelings are not special. Feelings are subjective. Sensitivity is subjective. What offends one person won't offend another person. If I take my book to a gay person and say, yo, here's some money, read this, you're a sensitivity reader, they don't speak for all gay people. That's what happens when you spend so much time fixating on a person's sexual orientation. You make that the sum of their identity. Tokenism, wokenism, either way, when you do that, you're reducing the person down to that. How are we gonna have well-crafted, well-fleshed out characters if people cannot move past this stuff. We need stories about mental illness and disabled characters and gay characters. We need representation is important. It's an important part of fiction because we live in a diverse world, because there are so many different people of different backgrounds and ethnicities and sexual identities. If someone wants to check for inaccuracies with someone who has a specific condition, then that is great. But this whole thing of seeing offense everywhere and checking that things are offensive, literature is subjective. You're going to offend somebody, that's inevitable. Another big problem with identity politics is the idea that we are now seeing racism everywhere. Saying that everything is racist or sexist or lerapipsophobic, we are demeaning actual genuine bigotry. The movie Gone with the Wind, many people are offended by Gone with the Wind. They say that it's racist because it's about slave owners. I've got news for you. Slave owners own slaves. Just like Nazis persecuted Jews. That's a historical fact. You can't make a film about slave owners and not have them be slave owners. Movies like Gone with the Wind can be read as cautionary tales because isn't it showing us how far we've come? I mean, this was about like the 1800s. It's showing us this is where society was a few hundred years ago. Isn't it great how much progress we've made? Isn't it wonderful? Like, screw you, Southerners, you lost. To me, the film is almost a mockery of this idea of the amazing South where everyone was so happy. The film is kind of mocking that. In 2020, the show Fawlty Towers had an episode taken down from Netflix because the character was espousing racist views, and yet the show was clearly condemning the racism. But they took it down because no one looks at context anymore. When Community came to Netflix last year in 2020, the episode Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was taken down because the character Senor Chang painted his skin black because he was a dark elf, by the way. And also Chang is an Asian man. He's not even white, he's Asian. The irony is that the characters were well aware that what he was doing was insensitive. The show was almost mocking it because the character of Chang himself was, especially at the time, quite a narcissistic, crude person. People who watch Community will understand that. Most people are aware, by the way, that doing blackface is inappropriate, because if they weren't, then blackface would be depicted all over shows and film and television. White people have a history of painting themselves as black to mock African Americans. But Chang wasn't even doing that. He was a dark elf. He wasn't even doing blackface. What people don't understand is that when comedians do so-called racist or offensive humor, they're usually mocking the views that come with it. If somebody makes a racist joke, it's not because they're racist, it's usually because they're mocking the idea that someone is racist. Anyone who loves and cares about art and freedom of expression and freedom of creativity and satire and comedy should be very concerned. How long is it before books start being banned from schools? I mean, it's already happened historically. It used to be the case that right-wingers, usually right-wing conservative Christians, would censor and ban works of art. It's stupid on both sides. Last year, J.K. Rowling underwent a serious amount of controversy because of her statements around the transgender community. My personal thoughts about what J.K. Rowling said, her tweets, whatever. So what? So what if she's transphobic? I don't personally think she is. I think that her statements were very misinterpreted and taken very, very out of context. But at the same time, even if she is transphobic, even if she hates transgender people, so what? Why does it matter what she thinks about transgender people? Why does it matter? One of my favourite singers, right, Michael Jackson, was probably a paedophile. The day after watching Leaving Neverland, I'm on the bus and I'm listening to Bad. Why? Because his music is fucking good. You don't have to like somebody to appreciate their work. This is so stupid. You know Hitler, Adolf Hitler, right? The guy who killed Jewish people. He was an okay artist. If I showed you a painting right now, this was painted by Adolf Hitler. Are you gonna say it's a piece of crap because the guy who painted it was an evil, horrible, disgusting psychopath? Where is this idea coming from that artists cannot be human beings? That if somebody is an artist that we have to agree with every single thing they do? What the fuck? Enid Blyton was probably a racist. I loved Enid Blyton's books as a kid. With the whole J.K. Rowling thing, many people have made the argument that her views will stir up hatred, and they're right, her views have stirred up a lot of hatred against her. All I've seen is an overwhelming amount of hatred geared towards J.K. Rowling and nothing but solidarity for the transgender community, which is proof that many people do support and accept transgender individuals, myself included. And, you know, I don't agree with all of her views. She's a feminist. I'm not a feminist. There were a lot of things she said which I thought were like, no, but her views. The thing that irks me most of all about the J.K. Rowling controversy wasn't even her comments and the way people reacted to them. It's what people said about this book. A lot of people who, by the way, had not read this fucking book said that it was transphobic. Now, maybe J.K. Rowling is transphobic. Maybe I missed something. But anyone who objectively reads this book, objectively this book is not transphobic. And actually saying that it's transphobic is more transphobic. And I'm going to explain why. The character in this book who caused all of the ridiculous controversy is somebody called Dennis Creed. Dennis Creed is a serial killer who dresses up in women's clothes and kills them. By the way, he's also a cisgendered heterosexual man. There is a term for that. It's called cross-dressing. It seems way more transphobic to say that cross-dressing is the same as being transgender. But what I don't understand is all of these idiots who haven't read this book. There was this girl, right? I'm not gonna link the video or anything because I don't want to start slandering people, but she made the whole criticism about this book and then she goes, I read the book. I mean, at least, you know, the first 10 chapters because, like, I don't want to give J.K. Rowling my money. What? She read the first 10 chapters. She didn't even read the whole book. If she had bothered to actually read the entire book, I read the book, and it's not transphobic. The character of Dennis Creed is barely mentioned after the first 100 pages. There's one scene later on where he's interviewed. He's not even the killer. Spoiler alert. He's not even the one who killed Margaret Bamborough or whatever the fuck her name is. This book is over 900 pages long, and this one character, Dennis Creed, he could have been taken out of the book and there still would have been a plot. Creed's character was based off of real life male serial killers who dressed up as women and killed their female victims. The whole point of being trans is pushing the argument and making the case that gender dysphoria is a medical condition. That's not the same as just a man in a dress. Being a man in a dress is not the same as being trans. What happens when we see real, genuine bigotry taking place? What happens when I want to talk about actual things that irk me as a person of colour? One of the big things for me with writing this series, I've seen too many contemporary romance books filled with white Anglo-American characters. And that's fine. That's not a bad thing. But I would like to see more characters of colour, so I've done that. I'm talking about that, not as someone who's woke, but as someone who's conscious. As someone who wants to talk about genuine social issues. We can't talk about social issues anymore without everything being problematic. It's borderline impossible nowadays to talk about race, gender, class, sexuality, because of identity politics, because of the oppression Olympics, because of wokeness. The only way for us to overcome these things is to become open-minded, to listen and learn, not automatically shut down things that we can't be bothered to research. The world that we're in now is a world where freedom of expression, freedom of creativity is slowly being eaten away at. We're living in a society where rational thought, critical thinking, and open-mindedness is being squandered. My current novel that I'm working on, it's a young adult satire, and it's actually about all of this what I've discussed in this video. It's about a dystopian society which is run by the Social Justice Party. They're actually called the SJP. I'm not going to say too much about it right now. More videos on that should come soon. Please let me know your thoughts on this. I am all for open discussion. I'm all for people disagreeing with me. Just please explain why. Subscribe.